I am Crystal, 32 years old, with a successful career in architectural design that I built from the ground up. Despite my achievements, I have always been the difficult daughter in my family, the one who never quite fit the mold they created. When my younger sister Emily announced her wedding, I tried to be supportive, but family tensions escalated beyond repair. Nothing prepared me for that dinner 3 months before the wedding when my father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "The greatest gift you could give your sister is disappearing from our family forever." Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and subscribe if you want to see how I rebuilt my life after my family threw me away. Growing up in our upper-middle-class Boston suburb appearances meant everything. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and seasonal decorations reflected my parents Harold and Diana, perfectly meticulously maintained and rigidly traditional. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family, but inside those walls, love came with conditions I could never quite satisfy. My father Harold built his accounting firm from nothing, working 60-hour weeks and expecting the same dedication from his family. My mother Diana left her nursing career to become the ideal homemaker and corporate wife, hosting dinner parties and charity events with precision that would make Martha Stewart envious. Both came from modest backgrounds and climbed the social ladder with determination and strict adherence to what they considered proper values. Then there was Emily, my sister, younger by 5 years, and the embodiment of everything my parents valued. From an early age, Emily learned to smile prettily to agree with our parents and to follow their carefully laid plans. She took ballet and piano as mother suggested, joined the right clubs in high school, and attended our father's alma mater. She majored in communications, as they advised, and secured a respectable job at a public relations firm with connections to our father. Her entire existence seemed designed to please them, and they showered her with approval in return. I was different from the beginning. Even in elementary school, I questioned rules that made no sense. I preferred building blocks to dolls and would spend hours designing elaborate structures rather than playing house like Emily. In middle school, I won the science fair with an architectural design rather than the baking competition my mother had entered me in without asking. By high school, the pattern was set. Emily followed. I forged my own path. I secured a scholarship to Rhode Island School of Design instead of applying to the local colleges my parents preferred. The day I announced my acceptance to RISD should have been celebratory. Instead, my father frowned and said, "That art school? What kind of stable future will that bring you?" Mother added, "Crystal, be practical. Think about how this reflects on the family." Meanwhile, when Emily got into Boston University 2 years later, they threw a party and invited extended family to celebrate. My academic achievements were always minimized. When I graduated with honors and secured an internship at a prestigious architectural firm, my father said, "Well, I suppose you could always do interior decorating if this architecture thing falls through." Mother would introduce me to her friends as our daughter who draws buildings, while Emily was our daughter following her father into business. The constant comparisons created an invisible wall between my sister and me, one neither of us built, but both felt. By my late 20s, I had established myself at Meridian Designs, working on sustainable commercial projects that had won industry recognition. I had my own apartment in Cambridge, a 5-minute walk from the Charles River, where I found peace away from family expectations. It was there I met Adam 3 years ago at a community garden project where I volunteered design services. Adam wasn't what my parents envisioned for me. A talented sculptor who taught art therapy at a rehabilitation center, he had long hair tied back in a neat ponytail and hands rough from working with stone and metal. When I brought him to a family dinner, my father barely spoke to him directly. Mother later called to express concern about his unstable artistic career despite Adam having tenure at his institution. They never bothered to learn that his sculptures sold for 5-figure sums, or that he had pieces in permanent collections across the country. "You could do so much better, Crystal," my mother would say during our monthly phone calls. "Look at the type of men Emily dates, professional, stable, from good families." The distance between me and my family grew wider with each passing year. I stopped attending most family functions after a particularly uncomfortable Thanksgiving where my father spent the entire meal questioning Adam about his retirement plan, as if he were an unsuitable suitor from a Jane Austen novel rather than my committed partner. Emily would occasionally reach out with awkward texts or calls that felt obligatory rather than genuine. Last Christmas, I made one last attempt at reconciliation, buying thoughtful gifts and even wearing the type of conservative dress my mother preferred. For a few hours, it seemed like progress. Dad mentioned a building project his firm was undertaking, almost asking my professional opinion before trailing off. Mom complimented my hair instead of suggesting I cut it to look more professional. Emily and I shared a genuine laugh over childhood memories. But by dessert, the familiar patterns returned. Mom mentioned Emily's promotion 3 times while asking nothing about my recent award-winning project. Dad steered the conversation toward Emily's dating life, specifically her new boyfriend Jeffrey from a family with political connections. When I mentioned considering a teaching position at my alma mater in addition to my design work, Mom sighed dramatically and said, "Always so restless, Crystal. Why can't you just settle into one proper career like your sister?" I left that night thinking perhaps some distances couldn't be bridged, some expectations never met. I decided then to love my family from afar, maintaining polite but limited contact. It was easier that way for everyone. At least that was the plan until Emily's engagement changed everything. The engagement announcement came via group text, a photo of Emily's hand sporting a 3-carat diamond ring with the caption, "Jeffrey asked," and I said, "Yes." Mother called me immediately, her voice pitched higher than normal with excitement. "Crystal, did you see the news? Your sister is engaged to Jeffrey Whitmore, the Whitmore's Crystal. His father is on the governor's economic advisory board, and his mother chairs 3 charity foundations. This is the perfect match we always hoped for, Emily." She spoke for 15 minutes about the ring, the proposal at the Whitmore's summer house in Newport, and the prestigious connections this marriage would bring, before finally pausing to ask how I was doing, clearly as an à la Percy afterthought. Despite feeling overlooked as usual, I genuinely wanted to be happy for Emily. We might have grown apart, but she was still my sister. I sent her a congratulatory bouquet and a heartfelt card offering my help with wedding preparations. Her response was a brief thank you text with the date of the engagement party, which happened to conflict with an important presentation I had scheduled months in advance. When I called to explain why I couldn't attend, Emily seemed disappointed but understanding. Mother, however, was less forgiving. "This is exactly why we worry about you, Crystal. Family should come first, not some work presentation. Emily would drop everything for your special moments," she said conveniently, forgetting that Emily had missed my 30th birthday for a weekend spa retreat with her college friends. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Emily herself. "Crystal, I know things have been distant between us, but you are my only sister. Would you be my maid of honor?" Her voice carried an odd mixture of sincerity and something that sounded rehearsed. Caught off guard, I agreed immediately, hoping this might be a chance to rebuild our relationship. "Of course, Em, I would be honored." The first family dinner to discuss wedding plans was scheduled at my parents' house the following weekend. I arrived early with a wedding planning binder I had put together full of organizational spreadsheets, timeline suggestions, and even some sketches for possible venue layouts. I was determined to be the supportive sister despite our differences. Mother opened the door and immediately frowned at my outfit, a professional but stylish pantsuit in deep burgundy. "Oh, Crystal, couldn't you have worn something more feminine? The photographer is coming to take some informal family engagement photos later." Before I could respond, she ushered me into the dining room where Dad, Emily, and Jeffrey were already seated. Jeffrey stood to greet me with a firm handshake. Tall, conventionally handsome, with the confident posture of someone who had never questioned his place in the world, he fit perfectly into the family my parents had always envisioned. "So you're the artistic sister," he said, his tone suggesting this was somehow amusing. "Emily says you draw buildings or something?" "I'm an architectural designer," I corrected politely. "Currently working on a sustainable business complex downtown." Dad cut in. Jeffrey's father just acquired a new office building on Boylston Street. Completely turnkey operation, didn't need any of those trendy green modifications. And so it began. Throughout dinner, every contribution I attempted to make to the wedding conversation was subtly dismissed. When I mentioned a beautiful botanical garden that might work for the ceremony, Mother shook her head. "We were thinking of St. Mark's Episcopal, where the Whitmore family has been members for generations." much more appropriate than an outdoor venue where the weather could ruin everything. When I opened my planning binder, Emily glanced at it and said, "That's sweet, Crystal, but Jeffrey's mother has already hired Elise Chamberlain as the wedding planner. She did Senator Morrison's daughter's wedding." As dinner progressed, Mother made increasingly pointed comments about my appearance, suggesting I should consider doing something with my hair before the wedding, and perhaps consulting with her dermatologist about my complexion. She asked if I was still with that artist fellow in a tone that might as well have said homeless vagrant. "Yes, Adam and I are still together going on 3 years now," I replied, keeping my voice even. "He's looking forward to attending the wedding with me." A look passed between my parents, but neither responded directly to this. Instead, Mother changed the subject to bridesmaid dresses, explaining that they had already selected a style that would flatter everyone, even those with less conventional figures, while looking pointedly at me, though I was only one size larger than Emily. By dessert, Emily had grown visibly anxious, picking at her cake rather than eating it. When I asked if everything was okay, she plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's just that. This wedding is so important to me, Crystal. To all of us. I just want everything to be perfect." After dinner, as I was helping clear plates despite Mother's insistence that the housekeeper would do it in the morning, Emily cornered me in the kitchen. "Crystal, I need to ask you something, and please don't take it the wrong way." She twisted her engagement ring nervously. "For the wedding? Would you consider toning yourself down a bit?" "Toning myself down," I repeated, genuinely confused. "You know, maybe dress more like Mom suggests, and perhaps not bring up those progressive political views of yours around Jeffrey's family. And maybe consider going back to your natural hair color, instead of those caramel highlights. The wedding photos need to have a cohesive look." I felt a familiar hurt bloom in my chest but pushed it down. "Emily, I would never do anything to detract from your day. But I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not even for wedding photos." Her expression hardened slightly, resembling our mother's disapproving look. "See, this is exactly what I mean. You always have to make things difficult. Would it kill you to compromise just once?" "Compromise shouldn't mean erasing myself," I said quietly. "But I do want you to have a beautiful wedding. Let's talk more about this when emotions aren't running so high." She nodded stiffly and returned to the dining room. As I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that agreeing to be maid of honor might have been a mistake. Still, I was determined to try for the sake of the sister I remembered from childhood before family expectations had driven us so far apart. Over the next few weeks, the situation deteriorated further. Mother called daily with new criticisms disguised as suggestions. The bridesmaid dress selected was clearly chosen to look unflattering on my body type. Emily began including me in fewer planning activities, always with the excuse that Mom and Jeffrey's mother have already decided on whatever element I had offered to help with. The group text chain for the bridal party excluded me from social events because they were just for Emily's friends from college, though I knew the other bridesmaids included cousins and Jeffrey's sisters. I maintained a positive attitude outwardly, while feeling increasingly isolated and hurt. I tried once more to connect with Emily over lunch, just the two of us, but she spent the entire time on her phone answering texts from her future mother-in-law and barely engaging in real conversation. When I gently pointed this out, she became defensive. "Not everything is about you, Crystal. This wedding is the most important day of my life, and there are people involved whose opinions actually matter." The implication that my opinion didn't matter hung in the air between us as I paid the bill for a lunch that had accomplished nothing except widening the rift between us. 3 months before the wedding, Mother organized a special family dinner ostensibly to finalize some wedding details but presented as a celebration. "Wear something nice," she instructed me over the phone. "The Whitmores might stop by for dessert." I spent extra time preparing, selecting a sophisticated navy blue dress that even my mother couldn't find fault with, styling my hair in a classic updo, and bringing an expensive bottle of champagne as a gift. Adam offered to join me for moral support, but I declined, hoping that without him as a target, my parents might focus more positively on wedding preparations. "Call me if you need an escape," he said as I left, kissing my forehead. "And remember, their opinions aren't facts." I arrived at precisely 7 o'clock, the champagne in one hand and a small gift bag containing a vintage handkerchief for Emily in the other. It had belonged to our maternal grandmother, the one family member who had always accepted me unconditionally. I thought Emily might appreciate carrying it as her something old. Mother answered the door and gave me a quick once-over. "That dress is acceptable," she said, which from her was practically effusive praise. Everyone's in the living room. The atmosphere initially seemed lighter than our previous gathering. Dad was showing Jeffrey some old family photos, and Emily was actually smiling at me as I entered. I handed her the gift bag first. "Just a small something for your wedding day," I said. "No pressure to use it, but I thought you might like it." Emily opened the bag and carefully unwrapped the delicate handkerchief, her expression softening. "This was Grandma Rose's, wasn't it? I remember her always having it in her purse. She gave it to me before she passed, but I think she would want you to have it for your wedding." For a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of my sister as she used to be before expectations and competition had come between us. She gave me a genuine hug, whispering, "Thank you, Crystal." The moment was broken by Mother announcing dinner was ready. As we moved to the dining room, I presented the champagne to my father. "I thought we might toast to Emily and Jeffrey tonight," I said. He examined the label with a slight nod. "Good vintage. Not quite what the Whitmores served at their anniversary party, but it will do." We sat down to Mother's elaborate dinner, and for the first 30 minutes, conversation flowed relatively pleasantly. Emily talked about final cake tastings. Jeffrey discussed their honeymoon plans in the Maldives, and I managed to contribute a few comments that weren't immediately dismissed. As the main course was served, Mother turned to me with a deceptively casual tone. "Crystal, I've been meaning to discuss the dress you selected for the alterations appointment." I took a sip of water, mentally preparing. "What about it, Mom?" I thought we had agreed on the style the seamstress would adjust. "Well, Emily and I were talking, and we think something more conservative would be appropriate. The neckline you chose is rather revealing, and perhaps sleeves would be better. Your tattoo would be visible otherwise." My revealing neckline was a modest scoop that showed nothing more than my collarbones, and my tattoo was a small architectural compass on my upper arm that could easily be covered with makeup, though I didn't see why it needed to be. "I thought the dress was already selected and ordered," I said carefully. "Changing the design now would require starting over, and there's not much time left." Emily jumped in. "What Mom means is we've already changed the order for you. It's just better this way, trust us." I put down my fork, trying to maintain composure. "You changed my dress without consulting me." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Mother sighed. "It's Emily's day, not yours. The cohesive look of the bridal party takes precedence over your individual preferences." I took a deep breath. "I understand it's Emily's wedding, but I'm still a person with some say in what I wear. You could have at least discussed it with me first." Dad cleared his throat. "Speaking of the wedding, there's another matter we need to address." He turned to me with the stern expression I remembered from childhood reprimands. "Your mother and I have been thinking that it might be best if Adam doesn't attend." The room went silent. I stared at my father, certain I had misheard. "Excuse me." "It's nothing personal," Mother added, though. Everything about her tone contradicted this statement. "It's just that with the Whitmores being such a prominent family and all the important connections that will be at the wedding, we need to present a certain image. Adam is a bit unconventional." "Unconventional," I repeated, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. "He's a respected educator and artist whose work has been featured in major galleries." "What exactly about that is inappropriate for a wedding?" Emily interjected. "Crystal, please don't make this difficult. Jeffrey's uncle is the chairman of the Arts Council and his wife is very traditional. Adam's long hair and those earrings would just stand out too much in the family photos. So you want me to come alone to my sister's wedding, because my long-term partner doesn't fit your aesthetic." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He's my family too." "Don't exaggerate," Mother said dismissively. "He's a boyfriend, not family. Family is blood." "I love him," I said firmly, "and he's been more supportive of me than any of you have been in years." Dad's face hardened. "Now you're just being insulting. after everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me lately, Dad? Other than criticize my career, my appearance, my relationship, and everything else about my life?" "We've tolerated your rebellious phase for years," Crystal Mother snapped. "Most parents would have given up on a daughter like you long ago." The words hit me like a physical blow. "A daughter like me? You mean successful, independent, and unwilling to pretend to be someone I'm not?" "See," Emily cried suddenly, tears forming in her eyes. "This is exactly why we can't have normal family gatherings. You always have to argue and make everything about yourself. You're ruining my wedding just like you ruin everything." "How am I ruining your wedding by simply wanting my partner of 3 years to attend with me? Or by expecting to be consulted about my own bridesmaid dress?" I asked, genuinely baffled by the escalation. "Because you never just go along with anything," Emily shouted. "You always have to question and fight and stand out. For once in your life, couldn't you just blend in and make things easier for everyone?" I looked around the table at their angry, expectant faces, suddenly understanding with perfect clarity. They had never wanted me to be myself. They had only ever wanted me to be a reflection of them, an extension of their expectations, just as Emily had allowed herself to become. Before I could respond, my father slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. His face had turned an alarming shade of red as he pointed a finger at me. "I've had enough of this selfishness. Your sister is trying to have her perfect day, and as usual, you're making it all about your feelings, your principles, your insufferable need to be different." He took a deep breath and delivered the blow that would change everything. "The greatest gift you could give your sister is disappearing from our family forever." The room went completely silent. I looked to my mother, expecting some objection to this extreme statement, but she was nodding in agreement. "At least until after the wedding," she added, as if this softened the blow. "Everyone would be more comfortable." I turned to Emily, waiting for her to defend me, to say this had gone too far. But she sat in silence, tears streaming down her face, her expression a mixture of misery and what looked disturbingly like relief. Her silence spoke volumes of agreement. In that moment, something broke inside me, but also clarified. The pain was excruciating, but it came with an unexpected sense of liberation. If this was how little I meant to them, perhaps it was indeed time to stop trying to belong where I clearly wasn't wanted. I placed my napkin carefully on the table and stood up, my movements deliberate and controlled despite the emotional turmoil inside. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. "If that's how you truly feel, I'll respect your wishes," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "I wish you all the perfect conventional family you've always wanted." I walked calmly to the entryway, collected my purse, and added the apartment building keys my parents didn't know I possessed. Then I walked out, closing the door behind me with a quiet click that felt like a final punctuation mark on this chapter of my life. The first hour after leaving my parents' house passed in a blur. I drove aimlessly through familiar neighborhoods, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. Had my own father really told me to disappear forever? Had my mother agreed? Had Emily's silence truly meant she wanted this too? Around midnight, I found myself parked at a scenic overlook, staring at the city lights below. The pain in my chest felt physical, as if someone had reached inside and crushed something vital. I hadn't cried yet. I was still too shocked, operating on autopilot. I finally called Adam, who answered immediately despite the late hour. "Crystal, is everything okay?" His voice, warm with concern, nearly broke my composure. "They don't want me anymore," I said, the words sounding strange and hollow. "My dad said the greatest gift I could give would be to disappear from the family forever." Mom agreed. Emily said nothing. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I'm coming to get you. I have my car, I can drive. You shouldn't be alone right now. Come home, or I can meet you somewhere." Home. The word resonated painfully. Where was home when your family of origin had just exiled you? "I'll come to your place," I decided, suddenly not wanting to be alone in my apartment. Adam was waiting outside when I arrived, pulling me into a fierce hug before I could even fully exit the car. Only then did the tears finally come, harsh sobs that felt ripped from somewhere deep and wounded. He held me without speaking, one hand stroking my hair as I released the initial wave of grief. Later, curled on his couch with a blanket around my shoulders and a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, I recounted the entire evening in detail. Adam listened without interrupting his expression, growing increasingly troubled. "They're wrong, Crystal. So fundamentally wrong about you. About what family should be about," everything he said when I finished. "You deserve so much better than this conditional, controlling version of love they're offering." "What do I do now?" I asked, feeling adrift. "Just accept that I don't have a family anymore?" He took my hands in his. "First, you let yourself grieve. This is a real loss, and it hurts. Then when you're ready, we figure out the next steps together. But I need you to know something." His eyes held mine intently. "You are not alone. You have me, you have friends who love the real you, and you have the strength that's gotten you this far despite them." I spent that night in Adam's guest room, sleep coming in fitful bursts between periods of stunned wakefulness. By morning, grief had begun transforming into something harder and more focused. I had spent years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. No more. Over breakfast, a sudden realization hit me. "The apartment building on Marlborough Street," I said, looking up from my coffee. "I'm part owner." Adam looked confused. "Your parents' investment property?" "Yes. My grandmother left her share to Emily and me in her will. It was her way of making sure we would always have financial security. I'd almost forgotten because Dad manages everything and just deposits the quarterly income into our accounts." I pulled out my phone and called Stephanie Torres, a lawyer I had consulted when negotiating my employment contract the previous year. "I need to understand my legal rights to a property I partially own but don't actively manage," I explained after exchanging greetings, "and I may need to sell my interest quickly." She agreed to see me that afternoon. Before the appointment, I went to my apartment to shower and change, feeling oddly detached as I moved through spaces that suddenly seemed like they belonged to a different life. My meeting with Stephanie confirmed what I had suspected. As a legal co-owner of the building, I had the right to sell my portion of ownership. The most straightforward approach would be selling back to the other owners, my parents and sister, but I could also sell to an outside buyer if they refused. "Be prepared for resistance," Stephanie warned. "Family business matters can get complicated quickly, especially when they're unexpected." "They told me to disappear," I said flatly. "I'm just following instructions." Next, I visited my bank and froze the joint account established by my grandparents, which required all signatories to approve any transactions. It wasn't a vindictive move, but a protective one. I needed time to sort out the financial entanglements before anyone could make impulsive decisions. Back at my apartment, I called my supervisor at Meridian Designs and requested 2 weeks of emergency personal leave, something I had never done in my 8 years with the firm. "Is everything all right?" Crystal Diane asked, genuine concern in her voice. "Family emergency," I said, the irony of the phrase not lost on me. "I need some time to handle personal matters." "Take whatever time you need," she assured me. "Your projects are well documented, and we can redistribute the immediate work. Just take care of yourself." That evening, Adam helped me set up new bank accounts entirely separate from anything connected to my family. We spent hours organizing important documents and making lists of all the practical steps needed to disentangle my life from my family's influence. "It feels strange," I admitted as we worked. "Part of me still can't believe this is happening, while another part feels like I should have done this years ago." "Sometimes the hardest decisions are made for us," Adam said gently. "But what we do after is our choice entirely." By the end of that first week, I had consulted with a real estate attorney specializing in co-ownership disputes, listed my share of the apartment building with a broker who dealt in partial property interests, and begun the process of legally separating my financial affairs from my family's. Throughout this time, my phone remained surprisingly silent. No calls from Mother, no texts from Emily, not even angry voicemails from Dad. It was as if they were testing whether I would come crawling back, apologizing for standing up for myself. Or perhaps they truly meant what they had said about wanting me to disappear. The silence hurt more than angry confrontations would have, confirming that I could be so easily discarded from their lives without even a moment of reconsideration. But it also strengthened my resolve. I would not beg for scraps of conditional affection from people who could treat their daughter and sister this way. On the 8th day after the dinner, my phone finally lit up with my parents' home number. I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready to engage. My father's voice, tense and controlled, filled my apartment when I played the message. "Crystal, this is your father. We need to discuss your recent actions regarding the Marlborough property immediately. Call me back today." No apology, no acknowledgement of his cruel words, just demands about property. 2 hours later, another call, this time from Mother. "Crystal, this behavior is childish and spiteful. Freezing the accounts and trying to sell property over a simple family disagreement is completely disproportionate. Call us so we can sort this out like adults." A simple family disagreement. Was that how they viewed telling their daughter to disappear forever? By the next day, the calls had escalated in frequency and hostility. Dad's voicemails became increasingly threatening with vague references to legal consequences, while Mother alternated between guilt trips and minimizing what had occurred. Emily sent a single text. "How could you do this right before my wedding? You really are determined to ruin everything." I forwarded the voicemails to my lawyer, but otherwise maintained my silence. This was no longer about spite or revenge. It was about finally establishing the boundaries I should have set years ago. In the midst of this storm, Adam became my anchor. He brought dinner when I was too emotionally exhausted to cook, listened without judgment when I needed to process my feelings, and gave me space when I needed solitude. One evening, as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset, he took my hand. "I've been thinking," he said quietly. "You mentioned feeling like you don't have a home anymore, but that's not true. You have a home with me if you want it. Not just now, but always." I looked at him, this man who had loved me consistently and without conditions, who had seen my strengths and flaws and chosen me anyway. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" He smiled, a little nervous but certain. "I had planned something more elaborate for this, but recent events have clarified what matters. I love you, Crystal. I want to build a life with you, create our own family based on acceptance and genuine support. Will you marry me?" In the midst of losing my family of origin, being offered a new beginning with someone who truly loved me felt like finding an unexpected light in darkness. I said yes through tears that for the first time in days came from joy rather than pain. As the second week progressed, an unexpected ally emerged. Janet Collins, my mother's oldest friend and our former neighbor, reached out via email. "Crystal, I've known you since you were born, and what I'm hearing about this situation doesn't sound like the full story. If you're willing to talk, I'd like to hear your side of things." We met for coffee, and I gave her an honest account of what had transpired. Her expression grew increasingly troubled as I spoke. "I suspected as much," she sighed when I finished. "Your mother has been telling people you had a minor disagreement and then vindictively tried to financially damage your parents out of spite. I knew that didn't sound like the Crystal I've watched grow up." "They told me to disappear from the family," I reminded her. "I'm just ensuring I can be financially independent when I do so." Janet reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Family should never make you feel like you need to erase yourself to be loved. What they've done is wrong, and I've told your mother as much, for whatever that's worth." It meant more than I expected, this validation from someone who had been part of my childhood, who knew all the players involved and still saw the injustice of the situation. For the first time, I felt less like I was overreacting and more like I was finally standing up for myself appropriately. As news of the rift spread through the extended family network, sides were quickly taken. My father's sister Catherine called to express her disappointment in my selfishness without ever asking for my version of events. My mother's brother Michael sent a terse text telling me to apologize to my parents and sister immediately. My cousin Samantha, once my childhood confidant, posted a vague social media message about supporting Emily during difficult family times, clearly positioning me as the villain. The narrative being circulated portrayed me as an unstable, jealous sister who couldn't stand seeing Emily happy and was using financial means to punish the family out of spite. The truth that I had been told to remove myself from the family and was simply securing my financial independence to do so was conveniently omitted from their version of events. My father's voicemails grew increasingly desperate as the reality of the property situation became clear to him. "Crystal, be reasonable. That building has been in our investment portfolio for years. You can't just sell your share to strangers. Think about what this will do to our family's financial planning." His concern for financial planning apparently outweighed any concern for his relationship with his daughter. In his seventh voicemail, his tone shifted from demanding to bargaining. "Look, perhaps we all said things in the heat of the moment that were regrettable. If you stop this property nonsense, we can discuss you attending the wedding as a guest rather than in the bridal party. That seems like a reasonable compromise." A guest at my own sister's wedding presented as a concession, as if being demoted from sister to acquaintance was a generous offer. I saved the message for my lawyer, but did not respond. Mother's tactics evolved into an elaborate performance of wounded maternal feelings. "After all the sacrifices I've made for you over the years," she lamented in one message, "this is how you repay me, by trying to punish us financially because we expressed concern about your inappropriate boyfriend. You're breaking my heart, Crystal." Not a word about telling me to disappear, not an acknowledgement of the years of criticism and comparison, just a revisionist history where I was the unreasonable one for having boundaries. Emily's approach was perhaps the most painful. Her texts alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas. The venue coordinator asked about final bridesmaid numbers today, and I had to tell her my own sister is too selfish to be part of my special day. Read one message. A day later, "Please stop this, Crystal. Mom and Dad are so stressed about the property that they're fighting constantly. You're tearing our family apart right before my wedding." I drafted countless responses, but sent none of them. What could I say? That they had already torn the family apart when they unanimously decided I should vanish. That I was simply granting their wish in the most pragmatic way possible. Nothing I could say would penetrate the narrative they had constructed where I was the villain and they were innocent victims. Amidst the family chaos, my professional life took an unexpected positive turn. Diane called from Meridian Designs with surprising news. The Westridge Sustainable Housing Project. They want you to lead the design team. Apparently, someone on their board saw your work on the Thompson Center and specifically requested you. It was the kind of career opportunity I had been working toward for years, a chance to create environmentally conscious housing that was both beautiful and accessible to moderate-income families. Even in the midst of personal turmoil, this professional validation felt significant. "I'll need to be fully focused for a project of that scale," I told Diane. "Are you sure my personal situation won't be a problem?" "Your personal life is your business," she said firmly. "Your work speaks for itself. The position is yours if you want it." I accepted the offer, grateful for a sphere of my life where my value was recognized based on merit rather than conformity. The project would require intense focus and long hours, which seemed like a constructive channel for my emotional energy. 3 weeks after the fateful dinner, an unexpected name appeared on my phone: Kelly Winters, Emily's best friend since college. We had always been friendly but never close, and I hesitated before answering. "Crystal, I hope it's okay that I called," she began, sounding nervous. I've been hearing Emily and your parents' version of what happened, and something doesn't add up. Would you be willing to tell me your side?" We met at a quiet cafe far from my parents' neighborhood. Kelly listened intently as I recounted the dinner and its aftermath, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "That's not at all what Emily told me," she said when I finished. "She said you got upset about some constructive criticism about your bridesmaid dress and stormed out, then tried to financially harm your parents because you were jealous of her wedding." "Do you believe that sounds like me?" I asked quietly. Kelly hesitated. "No, actually it doesn't. Which is why I wanted to talk to you directly." She fidgeted with her coffee cup. "The truth is, Emily has been different since getting engaged. More like your mother, honestly. Critical of friends who don't fit a certain image, obsessed with appearances. Several of us from college have noticed the change." She shared stories of Emily critiquing another bridesmaid's weight, uninviting a longtime friend who had recently divorced because it might bring negative energy to the wedding, and having a meltdown when a bridesmaid couldn't afford the $500 shoes Emily insisted were essential for the bridal party. "It's like she's turned into this person we don't recognize," Kelly admitted, "and your parents are enabling it completely." Before we parted, Kelly impulsively hugged me. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this with incredible grace. I'm not sure I could be as composed if my family rejected me like that. Her support coming from someone in Emily's inner circle felt like a small but significant validation. Not everyone was accepting the narrative my family was spreading. Adam continued to be my strongest supporter, centering me when waves of grief or anger threatened to overwhelm me. His parents, upon hearing about our engagement and the circumstances surrounding it, reached out with immediate warmth. Family isn't just blood, Adam's mother told me during our first dinner together after the engagement. It's who shows up for you, who accepts you as you are. We would be honored to have you as our daughter-in-law. Their genuine welcome, with no expectations that I should change or diminish myself to be accepted, highlighted everything that had been missing from my relationship with my own parents. It was bittersweet discovering what healthy family dynamics could feel like only after losing my birth family. The property sale progressed despite my father's attempts to block it. My share was eventually purchased by a real estate investment group for slightly above market value, providing me with a substantial financial cushion. The joint account issue resolved itself when my parents, realizing I wouldn't back down, agreed to a formal division of assets. By coincidence, the property sale finalized on Emily's wedding day. As I signed the final paperwork in my lawyer's office, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, sadness, for what should have been a day of family celebration, relief at finally being financially independent from my parents' influence, and a quiet determination to build something new from the ashes of these broken relationships. That evening, Adam and I had a quiet dinner at home, deliberately avoiding any mention of the wedding taking place across town. As we cleared the dishes, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Kelly. Thought you should know your cousin Alicia, your uncles James and Robert, and your grandparents from your dad's side all refused to attend the wedding when they found out what really happened with you. Emily is pretending everything is perfect, but she's been crying in the bathroom between photos. This perfect family image is cracking under pressure." I didn't respond, taking no pleasure in Emily's distress despite everything. The broken relationships extended far beyond just me, now fracturing the carefully constructed facade my parents had maintained for so long. Later that night, as Adam and I sat on the balcony looking at the stars, I felt a strange sense of peace beginning to emerge from the chaos of recent weeks. "I think I'm going to be okay," I said, surprising myself with the realization. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually." Adam squeezed my hand. "More than okay. You're finding out who you really are without their expectations weighing you down. That's a gift, even if it came in terrible packaging." A week after the wedding, I received my first communication from Emily since the event, a simple text sent from her honeymoon. "We need to talk when I get back. Just us." I read the message several times, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to maintain the distance that now felt protective, while another part wondered if my sister might have gained some clarity away from our parents' influence. After careful consideration, I replied, "I'm open to talking, but only if it's honest. I can't pretend the hurt didn't happen." Her response came hours later. "I understand. More than you might think." It was the first hint that perhaps Emily was beginning to see the dynamics that had shaped our family for what they truly were. Whether this would lead to meaningful change remained to be seen, but it represented a tiny crack in the wall that had been built between us. As weeks passed, I established firm boundaries with my parents while leaving the door slightly open for Emily. When my mother called demanding reconciliation on her terms, I calmly stated my conditions, acknowledgement of the harm done, and respect for my autonomy going forward. When she dismissed these as unreasonable, I simply ended the call without argument. I used part of the property money to fund intensive therapy, finally addressing the patterns of seeking approval that had shaped much of my life. I also booked a healing retreat in the mountains, giving myself permission to prioritize my well-being in ways I had never felt entitled to before. Through it all, Adam remained steadfast, neither pushing me to reconcile with my family nor encouraging me to cut ties completely. "This is your journey," he said. "I'm just here to support whatever path you choose." His unwavering acceptance helped me imagine what a healthier family might look like, one we could potentially build together. For the first time in my life, I began to believe that family could be a source of strength rather than constant evaluation, a safe harbor rather than a storm to be weathered. Emily's wedding day arrived sunny and mild. the kind of perfect early summer weather that brides dream about. I spent the morning deliberately focused on other things, taking a long run along the river, then meeting with a contractor about renovations to the condo Adam and I had just purchased together. Still, it was impossible to completely ignore the significance of the day. At 3 o'clock, when the ceremony was scheduled to begin, I found myself pausing in the middle of reviewing kitchen tile samples, momentarily overwhelmed by the strangeness of not being present for such a pivotal moment in my sister's life. No matter how justified my absence, it represented a rupture in the fabric of family that couldn't be ignored. I had just resumed my work when my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening it revealed Kelly Winters, still dressed in her bridesmaid gown, her professionally styled hair coming loose and mascara slightly smudged. "Kelly, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at the reception?" She looked nervously over her shoulder as if worried about being followed. I slipped out. Told them I had a migraine coming on and needed my medication. I only have about 30 minutes before they'll get suspicious. Baffled, I invited her in. "What's going on?" "I needed to talk to you." She set her small purse on my coffee table and took a deep breath. "The wedding is a complete mess behind the scenes." "I'm sorry to hear that, but why tell me?" I asked, genuinely confused about her purpose in coming here. "Because you need to know you're not the villain they've made you out to be, and you're not alone in seeing through their facade." She kicked off her uncomfortable heels and continued. 3 of your relatives refused to attend when they heard what really happened. Your father's parents made a brief appearance at the ceremony, but left immediately after, making it very clear they disapproved of how you were treated. She described the tense atmosphere at the getting ready suite that morning, with Emily crying not from pre-wedding jitters but from genuine distress over the family divisions. Apparently, Jeffrey's parents had gotten wind of the situation and made pointed comments about family loyalty that further upset Emily. Your mother spent the entire morning micromanaging everything, criticizing the makeup artist, the florist, even the way Emily was breathing. It was suffocating. And your dad kept checking his phone and looking stressed, which I now realize probably had to do with the property sale finalizing today. "How did you know about that?" I asked, surprised. "Emily told me. She knows more than she's letting on to your parents." Kelly leaned forward. "Here's the thing, Crystal. I think this wedding has been a wake-up call for Emily. She kept saying things like, 'Crystal would have stood up for me,' when your mother was being particularly controlling, and I understand why she couldn't take it anymore." During a quiet moment, I absorbed this information cautiously, not wanting to read too much into secondhand reports of my sister's state of mind. "Emily made her choice," I said finally. "She chose silence when they told me to disappear." "I know, and that was wrong," Kelly agreed. "But I also think she's beginning to see the pattern for what it island. Maybe too late for this situation, but not too late for her future." After Kelly left to return to the reception, I sat in my living room for a long time processing this unexpected update. The knowledge that some family members had taken a stand for me was both validating and bittersweet. Where had their support been all the years I was being subtly diminished and criticized? That evening, I received another surprising communication, a group text from several extended family members expressing solidarity and concern. Cousin Alicia wrote that she had always admired my independence and was appalled at how I'd been treated. Uncle Robert, my father's younger brother, apologized for not recognizing the family dynamic sooner and offered support. These messages, while healing in some ways, also highlighted how successfully my parents had controlled the family narrative for years. Only in this extreme situation had others finally seen through the carefully maintained image of familial harmony. The next morning, I woke to an email notification that the property sale had been completed, funds transferred to my new accounts. The timing seemed symbolic. Somehow, a clean financial break, coinciding with the official joining of my sister to her new family. One chapter ending as another began. Adam came over with breakfast and a stack of travel brochures. "I was thinking," he said as he arranged bagels and coffee on my kitchen counter, "that we might want to consider a destination wedding. Something intimate, just people who genuinely support us." The thought of planning our own wedding centered on authentic connection rather than appearances felt surprisingly healing. We spent the morning looking at possibilities from mountain retreats to coastal ceremonies, focusing on what would feel meaningful to us rather than impressive to others. In the midst of this pleasant planning, my phone lit up with Emily's name calling from her honeymoon. I hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker so Adam could hear. Crystal Emily's voice sounded small and uncertain, nothing like her usual confidence. "Do you have a minute to talk?" "I'm here," I said, neutrally, unwilling to make this easy for her, but not closing the door entirely. There was a long pause before she continued. "I messed up. I know that now. When they told you to disappear, I should have said something. I should have stood up for you." The admission, so direct and unqualified, caught me off guard. I had expected excuses or minimization, not this straightforward acknowledgement. "Why didn't you?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. Another pause, longer this time, because I was scared. Scared of losing their approval, scared of becoming the difficult one if you weren't there to take that role. Scared of facing what our family really island. Her voice broke slightly. But being here away from them for the first time in weeks, seeing how Jeffrey's family interacts so differently, I can see it all so clearly now. How toxic it's been. How unfair to you. I remained silent, processing her words, unwilling to offer easy forgiveness. "I'm not asking you to forget what happened or pretend it didn't hurt," Emily continued when I didn't respond. "I just want you to know that I see it now, and I'm sorry. So deeply sorry. Thank you for saying that." I finally replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "It matters to hear you acknowledge what happened. When we get back, could we maybe meet? Just us, no parents involved," she asked hesitantly. "I think that would be possible," I said, not committing to more than that single conversation. "We can start there and see where it goes." After we hung up, Adam wrapped his arms around me as tears I hadn't realized were forming began to fall. "That was unexpected," he said softly. "It was," I agreed. "I don't know if anything can really be repaired, but it's something," he finished, "a recognition of the truth at minimum." That afternoon, I received an email from Diane at Meridian Designs confirming that I would be leading the Westridge project with full creative control. The timing felt significant, another piece of my independent life falling into place just as Emily was showing the first signs of possibly breaking free of our parents' influence. Over dinner with Adam that evening, I shared a realization that had been forming throughout this tumultuous period. I think I've been caught in this impossible situation for years, trying to be authentic while also seeking approval from people who only wanted a version of me that doesn't exist. Maybe Emily is just starting to see that same trap. "The difference is, you found your way out," Adam pointed out. "You built a life that's truly yours despite their disapproval. That takes incredible strength." I thought about the transformation of these past months, the pain of rejection, the liberation of finally stopping the cycle of seeking approval, the discovery of my own resilience, and now this unexpected opening with Emily. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been necessary. I think I said slowly that regardless of what happens with Emily or my parents, I'm finally free to be fully myself. And that's worth everything it cost. Adam raised his glass in a toast. "To being uncompromisingly yourself. The greatest gift you could give to the world." We clinked glasses, the sound bright and clear in the evening, quiet like a bell, marking the beginning of something new. 6 months after the breaking point dinner, Adam and I held our intimate wedding celebration at a small coastal inn in Maine. Unlike the elaborate status-conscious event Emily had, ours was intentionally simple. 40 guests. We genuinely cared about locally sourced food and decorations that included architectural elements Adam had sculpted especially for the point they occasion. My dress was exactly what I wanted, a flowing design that incorporated subtle structural details reflecting my architectural aesthetic. I wore my hair as I pleased, my small tattoo visible without shame or concealment. Every element of the day was chosen because it had meaning to us, not because it would photograph well for social media or impress anyone. The ceremony took place at sunset on a rocky outcropping overlooking the Atlantic. Adam's father officiated, incorporating readings we had selected about building strong foundations and creating spaces of belonging. When we exchanged vows, I promised to create a home with Adam where authenticity was valued above perfection, where love was never conditional. Emily attended alone. Our tentative reconciliation had progressed slowly but steadily over the preceding months, beginning with that first careful meeting after her honeymoon. She had arrived at the cafe looking nervous, clutching her purse like a shield. "I've been in therapy," was the first thing she said after ordering coffee. "Twice a week since we got back from the Maldives. Jeffrey is coming with me to some sessions too." It was not what I had expected her to lead with, but it signaled a seriousness about addressing the family patterns that I found encouraging. Over the next hour, she spoke with painful honesty about recognizing herself in our mother's controlling tendencies, about the anxiety she felt whenever she considered disappointing our parents, and about the emptiness of the perfect life she had pursued at the cost of genuine connections. "I always envied your courage," she admitted. "Even when I was parroting Mom and Dad's criticisms, part of me admired how you stayed true to yourself." That first meeting didn't immediately repair our relationship, but it opened the door to further conversations. Each one brought more honesty, more recognition of the dysfunctional dynamics that had shaped us both, albeit in different ways. By the time Adam and I were planning our wedding, it felt right to include Emily, though I was clear that our parents would not be welcome. "I understand," she said when I explained this boundary. "I wouldn't be ready to have them there either. They still haven't acknowledged what they did." My professional life had flourished alongside this personal evolution. The Westridge project had garnered attention in sustainable design circles, and I had been invited to speak at several conferences about integrating environmental consciousness with practical, affordable housing solutions. After years of having my career minimized by my family, this external validation felt particularly meaningful. My partnership with Adam continued to strengthen, free from the shadows of familial disapproval. His art therapy practice expanded to include workshops for adults processing family trauma, inspired partly by witnessing my journey. Together, we created a home that reflected both of us, a place where neither had to diminish themselves to make room for the other. Therapy helped me process the complex grief of family estrangement. Some sessions left me drained and tearful, working through the pain of rejection and the years of subtle emotional abuse disguised as concern. Others were empowering, helping me recognize patterns and establish healthier boundaries in all my relationships. I learned that forgiveness didn't necessarily mean reconciliation. It was possible to release the anger and hurt without allowing those who caused it back into my life under the same terms as before. This distinction was crucial as I navigated my evolving relationship with Emily while maintaining clear boundaries with my parents. My relationship with my parents remained distant. They had made several attempts to re-establish contact on their terms, none of which acknowledged the fundamental harm they had done. Each time I responded with the same clear requirement recognition of what they had said and done, and a genuine commitment to relating to me as an adult with autonomy rather than a wayward child to be controlled. So far, they had been unwilling to meet these conditions. Mother sent occasional text messages that alternated between guilt trips and superficial pleasantries, while Dad limited his communication to forwarded emails about family tax matters. Neither directly addressed the breaking point dinner or their role in our estrangement. Through Emily, I heard they were telling extended family that I was going through a phase of rebellion and would eventually come to my senses. This narrative allowed them to maintain their self-image as perfect parents dealing with a difficult child rather than confronting their own harmful behavior. The hardest part was accepting that they might never change, that they might go to their graves believing I was the problem, rather than recognizing the toxicity of their conditional love. My therapist helped me see that while I couldn't control their perceptions or actions, I could control my response to them. "Their inability to see you clearly is their limitation, not yours," she reminded me. "You don't need their validation to know your own worth anymore." Building new traditions became an important part of my healing process. The first holiday season after the estrangement was difficult, the absence of familiar rituals highlighting the reality of what had been lost. But it also provided an opportunity to create celebrations that reflected my values rather than maintaining appearances. Adam and I hosted a Thanksgiving gathering for friends without family connections, creating a chosen family feast that celebrated genuine gratitude rather than obligatory togetherness. For Christmas, we volunteered at a community center before having a quiet dinner with Adam's parents, who gave me a beautiful architectural reference book with the inscription, "For our daughter whose designs reflect her beautiful spirit." That inscription moved me to tears, this simple acknowledgement of both my professional identity and my place in their family given freely without conditions or expectations. As the 1-year mark of the Breaking Point dinner approached, Emily invited me to lunch at a neutral location. She seemed nervous again, fidgeting with her napkin before finally meeting my eyes. "Jeffrey and I are expecting," she said quietly. "I'm due in summer." "Congratulations," I replied, genuinely happy for her, despite the complications this would introduce to our slowly healing relationship. "How are you feeling about it?" "Terrified, honestly." She twisted her wedding ring. "Not about the baby itself, but about parenting. I don't want to repeat the patterns, Crystal. I don't want my child to ever feel they have to earn love or meet impossible standards to be accepted." "The fact that you're worried about that already puts you ahead," I assured her. "You're aware of the pitfalls in a way our parents never were." She hesitated before adding, "Mom and Dad are already talking about how involved they plan to be, how they'll help shape the baby's upbringing. It's making me anxious." "What does Jeffrey think?" "He's been amazing, actually. Since we started therapy, he's become really protective of my boundaries with them. He told Dad last week that while they're welcome to be loving grandparents, all parenting decisions will be ours alone." I felt a surge of appreciation for my brother-in-law, whom I had initially dismissed as just another status-seeking extension of my parents' values. People could surprise, you could grow and change when given the chance. "And how do you feel about me as an aunt?" I asked carefully. "I would understand if that's complicated right now." Emily reached across the table to take my hand, her eyes suddenly bright with tears. "I want you in my child's life, Crystal. I want them to know their aunt who stands up for herself, who creates beautiful things, who lives authentically. I want them to have what I didn't have growing up, an example of how to be true to yourself even when it's difficult." Her words, so unexpected and healing, broke something open in me. The final piece of grief I had been carrying, the mourning for the sister relationship I thought was lost forever. "I would be honored to be that aunt," I said, squeezing her hand in return. The journey from that devastating dinner to this moment of new beginnings had been painful, but ultimately transformative. I had lost the fantasy of an accepting family of origin, but gained something more valuable: self-respect, clear boundaries, and relationships based on genuine acceptance, rather than conformity. As I drove home from lunch with Emily, I reflected on the strange gift hidden within my parents' cruel words. By telling me to disappear, they had inadvertently freed me from the exhausting pursuit of approval I could never earn. In trying to erase me, they had instead prompted me to become more fully myself. The human heart has remarkable capacity for both wounding and healing. Family has the power to inflict the deepest hurts precisely because we care so much about those connections. But we also have the power to redefine family on our own terms, to create circles of belonging based on mutual respect and acceptance rather than obligation or shared DNA. My story doesn't have a neat, happy ending, where everyone reconciles and past hurts are forgotten. Real life rarely works that way. My parents remain unable to truly see me or acknowledge their role in our estrangement. That reality still carries pain, but it no longer defines me. Instead, I've learned that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who cannot accept you as you are. Sometimes healing means building something new, rather than repairing what was broken. And sometimes, the family that truly matters is the one you create through choice and love, rather than the one you were born into. Have you ever had to walk away from relationships that demanded you diminish yourself to be accepted? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve unconditional love too. Remember, sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead to the most beautiful new beginnings. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to be authentically yourself no matter what it costs.